I've just finished a Modern Warfare 3 campaign, so I thought I'd do a video with my honest reactions, my honest kind of review of it, I guess. Now I've played the entire thing from beginning to end, and I can't swear at the beginning of a YouTube video, so I'll just say I didn't think it was very good. Now this video will contain spoilers, so if you haven't played the campaign and you care about spoilers, maybe wait until you finish the campaign yourself and then come back and watch this video. I'm not going to go out of my way to spoil massive things in the story. I'm not going to talk about the ending or anything like that, but I will talk about what happens in a lot of the missions. It's kind of inevitable that I'm going to have to in this. So yeah, if you're worried about spoilers, maybe best to turn away now. So let's start with the positives, the things I liked about it. There were 2 missions in this that I thought were alright. Well, 1.5 really. The first mission, where you're going into the prison in Verdansk, it's the one that we'd already seen in the sort of trailers and things like that. That was pretty cool. It looked really good. It was very atmospheric. There was lots of nice visual effects and stuff like that. The gameplay was kind of fun, you know, you rappelling around and trying to help the prisoners in a riot. I thought that was pretty good. It was short, but it was good. It was fun. And then there's another mission later called High Rise, although it's not weirdly on High Rise. But anyway, there is a mission later called High Rise. I thought that was a lot of fun too. It kind of reminded me of The Raid or something like that. Like you moving up floor by floor, or like Dread, something like that. And that was pretty cool. That was pretty fun to do. It wasn't really doing anything spectacular, that mission, but I just had a good time doing it. I enjoyed it. Sadly, that's pretty much everything I can say that's positive about this campaign. Everything else I have to say in this video is very negative. And it's probably worth saying, I went into this campaign not really expecting to like it. I haven't liked many Call of Duty campaigns. I always think the story's a bit silly, the characters are very two-dimensional and boring. I'm not a fan of, you know, the Task Force 141 team. So if you're the sort of person that sort of stuff is very precious to you, you're probably not going to agree with anything I'm saying. And I know some other people have enjoyed this campaign. So this is just my opinion, this isn't an objective thing. But I did think the story was terrible. I mean, there basically isn't a story in this. It ends up in kind of the same place it begins. There's no big revelations, there's no big changes, no characters develop or anything like that. You could have rolled the credits at the end of the first mission, and basically nothing else would have affected the next game in the series. And I think that's a real shame, that it just feels like the entire thing is spinning its wheels. And we'll loop back to this, because I think this is a recurring theme, and not just the story, but also the gameplay. Something I've really enjoyed in previous Call of Duty games is how every mission you're doing something a little bit different. There's a twist on something, maybe it's introducing a new weapon to you, maybe it's introducing a new gameplay feature, or you're just interacting with something in a very different way. There's a twist on something. So think, you know, even in Modern Warfare 2, a campaign that I didn't like very much. I made a whole video about why I didn't like that. But you had, you know, that convoy mission where you were hanging out of a helicopter and then you were jumping from vehicle to vehicle. You had the mission of Soap where you had to improvise stuff and build traps and things like that to stop people. You had things that felt a little bit different. And, you know, you've had missions like the AC-130 missions before, or missions where you've been escorting someone, or missions where you had to hold up against an impossible force and it got harder and harder. You know, like that Bog mission in the original Modern Warfare. There's loads of missions like that in Call of Duty campaigns that just turn things on their head and they do things that you don't expect. This game doesn't have any of those. Not a single mission where something is done that feels interesting or unique or spectacular. The only mission it really does that changes things up at all is the AC-130 mission, which is just the same as the ones that have been in previous games, even in the game directly before this. And it does less than those missions do. There's no twist to it. It's just, hey, you're flying an AC-130 for 5 minutes, just shoot stuff. And that's it. That's completely it. There's nothing unusual about it, no interesting quirks on it, nothing looking at, you know, why would it be interesting having to use an AC-130? What are the downsides of having to use it or anything like that? It's just yeah, you get to shoot people in black and white for a little while and use these big guns. Have fun. And that's a real shame that the gameplay feels incredibly one note. In basically every mission, you're going into rooms or going into an open base or something like that, and you kill all of the enemies, and then you interact with a couple of things. And that's it. And I'm sure there's going to be people sitting there saying, well, that's what Call of Duty is. You go around and kill people. But I don't think it is. I think Call of Duty's done a good job of either having that kind of roller coaster feeling of it's taking you for a spectacle and showing you stuff and you're having to move quickly through it and it's exciting because of that, or it's doing something where, hey, you have to use a gun that you wouldn't normally use and you're using it in a strange way, so there's kind of an interesting challenge. or there's some big change up of the gameplay, you know, like the vehicle levels and stuff that we've had before. But there really isn't anything like that. There's a couple of times where it's a bit snowy and they say, hey, you can use a thermal scope for this, but you don't really need to. It doesn't really make that much difference. And there's a few where it's dark and they're like, hey, you should put night vision goggles on. And again, you don't really need to. Like, you can if you want. It just feels very, very odd that they wouldn't do anything more interesting than that. And speaking of the weapons, one of the things I was talking to chat about before I started this run through was, hey, I'm really excited about getting to try the new Modern Warfare 3 weapons and seeing what kind of cool, crazy, unique weapons you get to try out. You don't. Pretty much all the missions just use Modern Warfare 2 weapons. There's a few Modern Warfare 3 weapons in it. There's an SMG called the Ripper that you get quite a lot. There's a couple of marksman rifle, sniper rifle type things. But most of the time you're just using Modern Warfare 2 weapons. Most of the time it starts you with them, and they're the ones that you find enemies using and stuff like that. Which is really, really disappointing. Like, it seems odd that I'm assuming we're getting, you know, a roster of new Modern Warfare 3 weapons to complement the Modern Warfare 2 ones. But it's starting to feel like maybe all those weapons we saw in the beta, that was it. And we don't even, in the campaign, you don't even get to use all of the ones that you got to use in the beta. It seems utterly bizarre that they didn't want to put those in. Even the new gameplay features that we know are a new thing for Modern Warfare 3, like the tactical ADS where you turn your gun on its side. I don't think the campaign ever makes a point of that or ever tells you to do it. You can do it, it's, you know, in the options, you can do it. I think you're aiming down sights and you press down on the D-pad, or I changed it to melee, and it works, but the game never tells you to do it or gives you a reason to do it. There's the new horizontal zip lines, you can do that, but again, the game never does anything interesting with them. They're just in a couple of the maps. The big kind of new innovation that they were advertising for this campaign were the open combat missions. These ones where you get quite a big area. It's about the size of maybe a ground war map for most of them, and you get to approach it however you want. And going into this, I kind of expected something a bit like DMZ, where maybe there'll be different areas on the map and you choose, you know, maybe you want to approach with a vehicle, maybe you want to go get some guns and stuff like that, get geared up and then go assault something. But instead, all of them just involve you doing like 4 objectives, where normally it's just go interact with like 4 things. And that's it. And you know, they say you can do it however you want, but you can't really the first time you play it, because you get given set weapons, and as you're going through you'll find more. And I've said, you know, if you restart the mission, then you'll be able to choose what you bring in. So you could choose in like a stealth setup, or you could choose to bring in rocket launchers, or you could choose to bring in a sniper rifle. But you don't get to do that the first time, so it kind of ruins that. And then if you do decide to start using all of these different things, it doesn't really change anything. The mission doesn't change based on how you approach it. It's just kind of either, do the enemies know you're there, or do they not know you're there? Now, I can imagine if you went through this all in stealth, maybe they would be more interesting, because stealth in this game is really hard, but it's not hard in a fun way. It's kind of, if any enemy sees you, then it seems like all the enemies nearby immediately know where you are, so it's kind of, your cover's completely blown. You don't have a chance to really sort of deal with them quickly and then escape. Instead, all the enemies know where you are, and then randomly, they'll just lose track of you, and it'll say they're searching for you. Then a few seconds later, they've just completely forgotten that you ever existed, and they'll go back to whatever they were doing. Even if there's like burning wreckage next to them and bodies all over. Doesn't matter, they've forgotten that you were there. It feels like super basic AI, you know, from stealth games from the original Xbox generation, like that kind of AI. And that's all the way through the game. That enemy AI is incredibly simplistic, and they never do anything where, you know, the enemies suddenly become smart or they become a real threat. Instead, they do the thing that I hate in games, and they just make loads of the enemies into bullet sponges. Tons of the enemies in this game will require like an entire magazine to put down. And I was playing on normal difficulty. I wasn't putting the difficulty up or anything like that. They just have tons of armor, so it takes you a long while to shoot them, which ruins a lot of stealth. You know, if you don't manage to down them in one shot, you're trying to use a silenced pistol or anything like that. Sorry, but that doesn't work. So now they're going to know where you are, and the entire base will know where you are. And it sort of ruins the feeling of, you know, rewarding accuracy, being able to like get loads of headshots in a row or anything like that. As soon as you start having to fight armored enemies, it just feels terrible. And it doesn't seem to make sense. You know, sometimes you can be using an LMG like the 5.56 Icarus, and enemies will still take like 10 shots to put down with something like that. That seems utterly bizarre. And there's lots of times where the game either feels like maybe they changed design decisions halfway through making a level, but then didn't fix it properly. So like one of the later open combat missions, I found a chopper gunner kill streak, and I thought that's amazing. There's definitely going to be some sort of section at the end of this level where I'll have to, you know, hold out and defend against hordes of enemies, and this chopper gunner will be super useful. But no, actually the chopper gunner helicopter was, by the time I found it, already on the map doing something, so that meant that I couldn't use the chopper gunner kill streak at all, and then all that happened in the rest of that mission was a helicopter landed and I had to get into it. And that was the end. It was just an anticlimax. And nearly every mission ends like that, just a complete anticlimax, where you think there's gonna build up to some amazing set piece, and it never does. There's even a section where it talks about going into the Channel Tunnel and that, you know, there's going to be a train being used, or there's going to be something set off in there, and you think, oh, this is going to be like that scene in Mission Impossible 1, you know, Channel Tunnel has some of the fastest trains in the world, it's going to be a really exciting mission on a train, and it's like, no, they just use the bloody tunnel, you're just in the tunnel, and occasionally a train comes past and, like, vaporizes some people, but that's it, you don't get to go on a train at all. It even says that the Channel Tunnel's in London, which is bloody not. Like, not once does it ever build up to something exciting. There's loads of times, like one time I was meant to be protecting Captain Price on the roof of this building, and it's, you know, they were talking in the comms about, oh, there's going to be loads of enemies coming in, it's going to be really hard, I don't know how we're going to survive. And, like, there was like 5 enemies. Like, nothing really happened. I was just standing around there, it was completely silent. Oddly, there's no real music in this game, considering Sledgehammer's last game, Vanguard, was absolutely beautiful for the soundtrack. Like, the soundtrack had that violinist on it, it was incredible, I really loved it, thought it was one of the best parts of that game. This doesn't have that at all. It just didn't feel like there was any music in loads of it, and I had to go back a few times and check that I had the music turned all the way up. But there was just kind of generic Modern Warfare music in the background. It never felt like it was building up to anything, or really that connected to what was going on in the game. Maybe there's some kind of bug where some music isn't playing, but it felt very, very strange. And I think all of that ties in together to the biggest problem with it is that it never feels cinematic. Maybe outside of that first mission. The first mission felt quite cinematic when you're attacking that prison. The entire rest of the game didn't. There's a few moments where it looks like it's gonna be some cool cinematic sequence, and then it's literally a cinematic because it's just a cutscene. Tons of the missions felt like the gameplay section was incredibly short, and instead it was just kind of linking together a couple of cutscenes. And none of the cutscenes are interesting. None of the characters are ever developed. Like I said, nothing really happens in the story. Everyone's doing exactly what you would expect at all times. So all of the villainous characters are behaving villainy. And because, you know, these are reboots of things, we already know how the characters react. And it feels like whoever's been writing this has been told, oh, you know, this character is like this, so they're just going to have to act like that all the way through, or they're going to have to do this at some point. And they're just kind of stepping in those footprints that have already been laid out before them and never doing anything interesting or new. There's not any real surprises in this until they do a surprise, and it's just something that doesn't feel earned at all. It just feels completely random, like they wanted to throw something in that people will talk about at the end. What this all comes back to is the feeling that this wasn't meant to be a full game. And I know leakers and people were saying this was meant to be DLC and then they turned it into a full game, and I didn't believe that, I didn't think that that was right. But after playing the campaign, that's exactly what it feels like, that this was never meant to be a full campaign. I think what probably happened was it was meant to be DLC with just a handful of missions, maybe like a 2-hour DLC, just introducing Makarov basically, and that being like the focus of it. And then at some point they decided they wanted to turn it into a full game. So they added those open combat missions that none of them really feel like they fit. None of them really feel like they're important in the story. There's a bunch of missions in this where you're just like going to find somebody and that's it. And then, you know, you find them or you get to the place where you thought they'd be and it's like, well, they're not there. And it's like the entire mission could have been covered by just a single line of dialogue. It could have been replaced by that. It feels like there's a ton of filler like that in it. And because there's no amazing gameplay ideas, there's no new features, there's no new like really exciting environments or anything like that, it feels a lot like they were just trying to pad something out. And that's a real shame. Even the stuff in Verdansk, and I feel a lot of people, me included, were kind of excited to see what Verdansk would look like, you know, see Verdansk in the new engine, everything looking really cool. it doesn't really look that good. There's a couple of like specific angles where stuff looks nice with the new lighting, but all of the texture work and the modeling and the geometry and stuff like that, it never looks that good. It almost looks a bit like, hey, we've already got these models and this map set up, maybe we could use this and save a little bit of time. You know, like how sometimes they use the multiplayer maps in the campaign or vice versa, and zombies and stuff like that, and you always think, oh, okay, that makes sense, they're reusing assets, that's a smart way to save time and stuff like that. It feels like there's a huge amount of that going on, to the point where it's just like, I want to see something new, I want to see something more exciting. Now, I feel like all of this feels pretty harsh. I don't like making negative videos. I haven't made that many in all of the time that I've been making videos, and I'm sure lots of very talented people worked really hard on this. But for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like a proper Call of Duty campaign, and I don't even think Call of Duty campaigns are that good. If anybody asked me, oh, should I buy this game for the campaign? It'd be like, absolutely not. Like, there's so many other Call of Duty campaigns that are much more fun to play than this. I would go back and play those in a heartbeat over this. I think the Modern Warfare 2 campaign is way better than this. And like I said, I made a whole video saying why I didn't like that. It just feels incredibly disappointing. And it does make me worry a little bit about the rest of the game. Now, I'm excited about multiplayer and zombies. Like, I really enjoyed the multiplayer beta. I thought it was a lot of fun. I did think it's a shame that there's no new maps, and it's a shame that they're bringing over all the Modern Warfare 2 weapons. Like, things like that are going to make it feel a little bit too familiar, maybe. And now playing the campaign, you know, I'm kind of thinking, oh yeah, that actually could be quite a significant problem. Like, that maybe will feel a little bit too familiar because this doesn't feel like a proper full Call of Duty game. And it's made me really worry about zombies. You know, the last time we had zombies was Vanguard zombies, where it felt like Treyarch were rushed. It felt like it wasn't like a proper version of zombies. And while I've been excited about Modern Warfare Zombies as being like the coming together of DMZ and Outbreak, and it's going to be something spectacular, now I'm starting to worry, is it just another rush job? Is it going to be another thing that's only kind of half-fledged? It's not a full idea, and maybe it's not got the level of polish that we'd want from a new Zombies experience. That's kind of a concern I have now. I am still excited about it. I am still going to play it next week, obviously, but I'm a lot more cautious about it than maybe I was before. Anyway, this has been a bit of a long rant. Thank you for sticking with it if you stuck all the way to the end. Don't forget to leave a like if you do enjoy it. And let me know in the comments, what did you think of this campaign? Try not to give too specific spoilers if you can help it, just so people can avoid those if they want to, although they probably shouldn't have watched this video all the way through. But let me know what you think, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.